You don't need running water in a pond. You don't need to mess around with a pond too much, but you have to have a fair bit growing in it. So the plants moderate the nitrogen and available nutrients, so you don't get algae doing it for you, which is what you don't really want. And like when we talk about those plants a bit more, you'll notice that they can all be edible plants. So while this duckweed is not sort of a table edible, it can be used as a in your mulch, in your compost fed to your chooks, really as a chook feed alone, or as a fish feed if you're growing fish in there. So koi and other weed-eating fish love this stuff. Obviously they'll eat fish pellets and stuff faster than they'll eat this. But one of the big issues with aquatic systems is all the inputs are external normally. So, you know, it sounds nice to grow your own fish and what have you, but when you're getting your pellets from Tasmania and your this from that and that from that, it's sort of, well, it's not very sustainable fish, is it? So if you can use plants like that to feed the fish, huge advantage there. So we'll just bucket it out. When you're filling up a pond from the tap, obviously the tap water's full of chlorine and fluoride and other things, which the pond sort of bugs doing their job will die if they get too much of that. So even if you don't have a pond yet, it's worth getting like a this kind of thing set up and just start converting a bit of water. That said, it's easy enough to pour in some tap water, spray it in, as you spray it in, the chlorine gas is off, and then throw in some dirt, and that chews up the rest of the chlorine.
Yeah, surface. You know, is it better to have the surface as opposed to depth? Like
No, it's better to have depth, especially for the heat in summer.
Yes.
So it doesn't take long for a shallow pond to warm up, and the hotter it gets, the more it suits the algal growth rather than what you want. And the hotter a pond is, the more it kills off the oxygen in the pond. And so if you've got fish and other crustaceans and stuff living in there, and your pond gets really hot, or there's too much algae, the algae rotting down also uses the oxygen, so it's sort of exponential. So deeper is better. That's why wine barrels and stuff, half wine barrels, are quite good. You know, they're sort of like this deep, but the surface area is about this big, and you can grow watercress and maybe a lily in the middle and watercress off the side and things like that. So there's different types of pond liner that you can get. Well, that grey one over there, that's not UV stabilised. So depending on how your pond is set up, it may degrade in the sun. Whereas the Azolla is more ferny looking.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you know, be a bit careful if you've got this kind of stuff. Don't put it in the native waterways because it's obviously going to take over there. Chooks will eat it, and it's high nitrogen. It's perfect as a fast carbon pathway, the same as banner grass and other things like that. It's just an aquatic one. So you can, this stuff, if you've got a pond that's open in the sun, this is just another way to grow nitrogen and carbon. So that will cover your pond to protect the sunlight from going in, to take the nitrogen out from maybe all the leaves that are falling in and rotting. So if you don't have enough plants in there, this sort of moderates itself. So it'll be a blanket cover if there's heaps of sun, and it's trying to stop all that sun from going into the pond. If you don't do that, you'll get algae and stuff forming through the layers in the pond, and your pond will algae up anyway. So you might think that a pond covered in this green stuff is not as nice as a crystal clear pond where you can see koi swimming around. But if you have a pond in Perth in the sun, it's going to go slimy if you don't have it covered with something. And the beauty of this stuff to me is I can go to feed my fish, scrape it out the way, it's crystal clear underneath, because this is stopping the sunlight from going down and feeding the algae underneath. Algae's not so good, it's harder to get out. It's really slimy and stringy and sticks to everything, and it'll get there by itself. So even if you don't really introduce algae to a pond, it finds its way. So this is brahmi. So a medicinal herb, but it's also sort of like a wet aquatic. So you can grow it on the edge, but I wouldn't grow it submerged. It tends to overhang. It's quite a nice thing to have weeping over the edge, and it does run in moist areas. Medicinally, memory and mental. It's a body tonic. Not like ginseng quite as powerful, but yeah, a lot of these things will take over your pond, but it's a case of managing that. Because at the end of the day, if something doesn't take over your pond and use up all the nitrogen and the nutrients in your pond, then it's going to get taken over by algae, which is a hell of a lot more effort to get out and no use to you. So this stuff will take over, but it won't cover the whole pond and the surface of the pond. This species here is called water celery or water parsley. If you want to taste the leaf of that, you'll notice that it sort of tastes much like celery or parsley. You can see the root system on that. It doesn't mess around. That stuff really grows. It will take over again, but how hard is it to get out? It's soft and just pull it out. And if you're eating it rampantly like you should be, it's really just a water version of parsley. This, although it looks pretty sick and sad, is kangkong, which is a water-based sweet potato variety type thing where you eat the young shoots. It grows readily in summer and in warm weather, but if you put this in a vase somewhere warm in the sun, it'll start to root, and then you'll have a few plants from this. So just snap that off there, and put them in a vase. So it's a crunchy, semi-tasteless green. It tastes a little bit like coconut milk. So this is a canna. It's the edible canna, so Queensland-based canna, so it's sort of native as well, but this is Canna edulis. So it's got the corms where they make the arrowroot flour out of. Now there's Asian-style arrowroot and there's the Queensland arrowroot. So two quite different plants. This is the Queensland-based one. So that kind of thing there is a starchy tuber that you can cook like a potato, or you can pulp it up and you can get the arrowroot flour, but you just have to have somewhere to dry the arrowroot flour then. Taro is more happy to be submerged. So that's kind of corm thing from the arrowroot again. That's the kind of thing you sort of snap off, and that's your usable bit, and that's your baby to propagate. So you get to eat all that, and in summer you've got another 10 of these because that's going to grow another lot of these. This root here is the root that's going to be the next plant, you can see. So in summer that'll come up at the surface and you'll get the next taro. This is the root that this plant came from. So it has runners and it pops up. So again, it's pretty invasive, it's pretty fast growing when it gets enough sunlight and nutrients, but it forms again corms or tubers or whatever you want to call them underneath. Yeah, absolutely. Like if you put it in there, there's nothing in there. So, yeah. But within a couple of weeks, there'll be no end of wood chips and leaves and other things starting to rot down, and all these roots, they're in there processing it. This is the bulrush, and it's kind of like the taro. It really takes over, and it'll just spread over the whole base of your pond into one big block. But again, for me, that's a good thing because I just pull it out. I get the little sickly thing and chop, chop, chop. There you go. 10 kilos of carbon that I didn't have to buy. It's another thing and that's processed all that sludge in the bottom of my pond, so my pond wasn't full of slime. So permaculture and carbon pathways and things like that, they require maintenance, they require effort. But you're normally avoiding a problem or avoiding a waste product. You're sort of harnessing it, using the plants and achieving that extra carbon in your backyard. Ponds can allow you to do that. I mean, to me, a pond is not for growing fish in a backyard. A pond is for having biology, extra biology, and having the opportunity to grow some edible plants which you wouldn't if you didn't have the water.